All right. This is going to be, I think, a really fun conversation. Let's get everybody's mics. Okay. So our panelists today are Guji, Lorenzana, and Gaurav, and I hope I say your last name properly.
You got it right. Absolutely right. Gaurav. Yeah.
Okay. Dagaonkar.
Dagaonkar.
Dagaonkar. Okay, I was close. And Ram and Davies. I knew I'd get that one correct. Yeah. All right. So we're going to speak about a lot of different ways that you can monetize music. And, when I was thinking about it and we were watching on copyright law, I thought, yeah, like training AI, maybe that's a point of monetization. But we'll get back to that because there's, out of all the points of monetization, I think it's important for us to first talk about what remains the biggest one, which is distribution. So let's talk about that first. Let's talk about what the state of monetization through distribution is. And Guji, I'd just like you as one of the largest distributors out there to give us an idea of where you see the market right now and how distribution works in terms of the whole ecosystem of monetization.
Sure. It's a great place to start, obviously. Digital music distribution is very important. I consider it probably the foundation of everything. If you are looking to monetize outside of just distribution, you definitely have to start there first. You have to be able to understand where you want your music to be. You got to be able to have a good relationship with your distributor if that's something that you're interested in. Being able to communicate with them. First off, we want to make sure that all the music and all the content is available on every platform that you have. So whether it be TikTok, whether it be Spotify, Apple Music, etc., you want to make sure that your music is available. That's the first thing. Secondly, you want to be able to have a good relationship with your distributor. There's a lot of things that a lot of artists and even a lot of labels don't realize that a lot of the conversations they can have with the distributor opens up a lot of different doors to many different opportunities, whether it's campaigns, whether it's special things that DSPs are doing, or just the marketing and the pitching and all of that. That becomes very important as well. And then also, since it is your business, you want to be consistent with your releases, be able to talk with the distributor about your release plan, your rollout, etc. And a lot of it starts there before you can even explore outside of distribution to find other ways to monetize.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was just going to talk on the back of distribution. So obviously distribution is concerned with the master recording right. On the flip side, on the other side of the same coin, are the publishing rights. Equally is really interesting and important in a digital ecosystem. And I think the big things to think about there are in a global digital ecosystem, it's really important to have direct relationships with the platforms. And it's really important to think about things like metadata. So post-distribution, you're making sure that you're capturing all of the publishing income associated with the assets, which is done in a really interesting and difficult way on a global landscape. It's different from the US into Europe, into Southeast Asia and Australia. There's lots of different mechanisms. So it's really important not only just to be good at publishing and metadata enhancements, but it's also really interesting and important to educate yourself in the different dynamics across the regions.
Excellent. And Gaurav, anything to add?
Well, I would say that from an artist's perspective, it's also important to understand that there will be other sources of revenue, such as sync, microsync. In India, we found that majority of artists do not even have agreements for their songs. It's just a few friends getting together, making a song, there is no agreement that happens, and then when a deal comes their way, that's when, a lot of problems happen because suddenly there's nothing captured. So I think, yes, absolutely, today you want to distribute your songs, but it's also important to have the back end sorted out before you do that.
All of these things that we're talking about are absolutely essential for people if they want to work anywhere, whether it's distributing your music or outside of distributing music, especially in the area I work in sync and creation of music for ads and brands and other forms of media. And we'll get back to that in a second, and I thank you for bringing that up, Gaurav. But I wanted to go back to 2 points that you had made. One, I'm going to go to you first, Guji, which is, in terms of distributors, I feel like people look at their distributors as just, and correct me on this, but I feel like people look at the distributors just like, okay, this is somebody that's going to put my music across a bunch of networks, and they don't really see the difference between one distributor or another in terms of the value add that they can provide. So with that said, what makes a distributor who actually helps you to create value beyond making sure you're on the different DSPs?
Yes, that's a great question. I think distribution, generally speaking, we all have access to kind of the same type of opportunities. So it's not necessarily who does it better, maybe what the contracts are, what the rates are, et cetera, and the splits. But it's being able to have a conversation with them and trying to figure out what best works for them. If they're approaching a specific campaign within Southeast Asia, speak with the distributor. What communications are they having with with the DSPs in the region that can actually benefit them in their release and help with their rollout? Just these little tiny things definitely matter, and they definitely, artists and labels need to have communication with the distributors on that side. But at the same time, they also have to understand, what type of artist are you? Are you just a hobbyist? Or are you trying to do this just for fun? I formerly am an independent artist myself, and currently I'm just doing it as a hobby. So I don't really have a rollout or anything like that, but from once in a while I release a song. So in that sense, maybe I just work on a do-it-yourself type of platform. Don't need any communication with DSP there. So really understand your business, what your why is, your goals are, and then talk with your distributor. That's going to be very, very important.
And also, I would imagine an understanding of the local markets is really key in what you do, right? Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Good. Okay. All right. And then the other thing is an issue that you brought up, Robin, that is something that I deal with every day, which is bad metadata. Bad metadata, I have gone like Don Quixote at windmills trying to correct it. But it is a problem that exists for us everywhere in the world. And it's one of the main barriers, I think, to people's music being monetized across platforms, in sync, and everywhere else.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's a very well documented subject and issue across the music industry. And what I really like about what you're saying is, on the distribution side, is trying to find a partner or someone that understands your business as an artist and can help kind of really develop whatever you're trying to do. And I actually feel like we're the same on the publishing side. I think for us, the kind of pillars we think about are things like strength of licensing and repertoire. So we have direct deals. So, our direct deal with DSP covers world ex-US. So we have repertoire coverage in, let's take Spotify as an example, as the biggest one. Spotify stream in the UK is collected and paid at the same time as a Spotify stream in Vietnam or in Hong Kong or in Japan, or it doesn't really matter. So I think for us, it's about finding that kind of strength and licensing of the repertoire. And then the other piece is the technology. So it's so much easier, having seen this done good and bad, to capture or to maximize your publishing income if you solve the metadata up front. So that's with better registrations, that's with working closely with partners, making sure that when the distributors are distributing music, they're accompanying it with as much of the compositional assets as possible. There was a brilliant speech before about the history of copyright and what was going on there, and I think what made me think about that is how it's great that there's the legal framework that protects copyright, but you need to understand how to maximize the value of that copyright through technology, and I think metadata is a great example where that's important.
I think that's a really good point, Robin, and I'd like to just drill down into that a little bit more. In terms of what you all are doing day to day, how are you helping people to maximize their potential in terms of monetization on the publishing side?
Yeah, great question. I'd think about that again in the context of this conference in two ways. One is regional knowledge. So I think Southeast Asia and ex-Europe is actually such an interesting space at the moment on the publishing side. For example, you see markets that have traditionally, like Japan is a great example of where the publishing market's traditionally been under blanket licenses, is now beginning to fragment. And then on the other side, in Indonesia, you've got examples of where it's actually moving to the other side. So you've got all these different moving parts, and I think we're all coming at it from the same place of how to maximize and protect the value of copyright, but maximize the value of it as well. So I think that's one of the really interesting points in the region. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so I had one more question I wanted to give you, Guji, and then we're going to move on from distribution. But the last question I wanted to say is, like, if somebody's looking to work with you, what are the onboarding options? Like, how do you work with Symphonic? If you're a musician, if you're just anybody who wants to engage with you.
Well, first, email us or email me.
Right, that's a start.
I could definitely have a conversation with you about that. We do have two separate tiers. We have a starter program, which is just the do-it-yourself type of tier, where if you're an artist and a hobbyist, for example, and just want to release music, we definitely offer that type of service. A lot of our A&Rs, I myself, we also seek business. So we look for artists and labels who are independent, who are probably looking for options with their distribution. And we try to seek that type of business as well. The onboarding process, I think just like many other distributors, they have a team usually based in those specific countries who are experts at those specific regions. We have people that are based in Taiwan and Greater China who understand that market, Korea, Japan, someone in Vietnam, and someone handling Southeast Asia. So we definitely try to get the experts there so that, like I said, if you're an artist or a label that would like to work with somebody who understands the market, then we want to make sure that we have those people in place. In fact, we just hired somebody in India as well. So that's a very complicated region too, because of all the different copyright issues and the metadata issues, et cetera. And I think one of the things a distributor does, and what Symphonic does as well, is another reason why you should communicate with them, is because we do have those conversations about metadata. We do want to make sure that they're well educated about making sure that they get their publishing done, and that they do have splits with the artists that they work with. These are very important things that a lot of artists that are maybe just starting don't realize that they have to do. So as a distributor, it also becomes a big part of our responsibility to open up that conversation and create a space for education. And it's working with people like my colleagues here on this panel in order to make sure that they're well educated about these other parts of the business too, which will lead to definitely other ways to monetize.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to shift to other ways to monetize in a second, but I also wanted to ask you the same question. Robin, how do people engage with you? How do they work with you?
So we represent about 50 publishers and about 300 songwriters. So if you are a publisher that is interested in direct digital licensing administration, then you can get in touch via the website. Same if you're a writer. Again, we only have, say, 300 writers, which kind of pales into comparison to most PROs and collection societies. That's because what we do is very unique on the writer side. So going back to the piece about partnership, very happy to, if you're interested in performance representation, then get in touch, and we can take it from there.
Excellent. Okay, so let's shift to arguably the most buzzy area of monetization, or at least it has been pretty buzzy, but it's also one of the most daunting, which is sync. And, it's sort of my day-to-day business, but also, people look at it and they say, oh, wow, look at that music that was used in Stranger Things, or look at the music that was used in that commercial. And there is real opportunity there for people. The markets are expanding in terms of the amount of music that's used, and also in terms of the types of music that's used. The amount of money per sync, that changes drastically depending on what it is. But there's no denying that this is an area of monetization that's not going anywhere. So with that said, I'm going to go to you, Gaurav, because I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your company, like a little bit more in depth of what you're doing, and give us your thoughts of where sync stands as an opportunity for artists, of course, in India, but everywhere.
Sure. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Hoopr, and we are India's first platform for micro sync and now sync as well. In all fairness, we started emulating a model which was made famous in the West by the likes of Epidemic, Sound, and Artlist, simply because we realized that in India we did not have a native platform that had our own kind of music which was required in content. So I was doing music for about 15 years before that, and we decided to get a group of people, 70 artists, and we created India's largest library of copyright-safe music. Having said that, I think, at least in India, the awareness of sync and microsync is relatively less even today. Our movie industry has always been about commissioning music.
Yeah.
It never was about synchronizing anything. A movie director, producer used to commission somebody known as a music director, and all the songs were made for that project. The same for ads. We're sort of waking up to sync, and even artists are realizing that, actually beyond streaming, there could be revenue sources. So we've just opened up our platform to any label and artist that wants to make its music available for sync and microsync in India. And I keep talking about microsync because, at least in our country, that's becoming one of the most important sources of discovery and revenue. There are about 80,000 brands in India that make videos every day on platforms like Instagram, Snap. TikTok, of course, is banned, but even YouTube Shorts. Close to 32 to 35,000 videos are made by brands every single day. Either they make it directly, or they collaborate with influencers, nano, micro, mid, macro, and so on. Now, each time a brand uses a song in the context of promoting a product, they need to obtain a license. And we've seen a lot of artists are just so gullible and so happy that a brand has used their music that they will say that, I think it's good for me, it's okay if they did not pay me anything. And we've seen brands also say that why should I be paying you? Come on, I'm making your song popular. And we had this discussion, a few months ago when I was sitting with a batchmate of mine, and he put out this argument that I don't need to pay you because I'm making the song popular. And I actually was wearing shoes made by his company, and I said, dude, I bought the shoes that you make. Imagine if all of us did not purchase your product. So why aren't you purchasing ours? So it's a mindset shift that's happening, but it's becoming a big play right now in India.
This is something, that we've gone through in the American market quite a bit. There's a case that was happening between Warner Music Group and DSW Shoe Warehouse, which is this big box store for shoes. And I came out publicly and said that I think the CEO at DSW is on crack or something, because what they did is exactly what you said. They were like, well, wait a second, we're allowed to use this. This is fair use. Why can't we do this? And I'm like, well, clearly it says in the terms of use on Meta and TikTok that if it doesn't come from their libraries, you have to go and get a license. So we do have to deal with these issues on the negative side, but the positive side is that we are seeing a lot of revenue coming in from microsyncs all over the world. And that's a big growth area for independent artists.
That is, as long as you make your music available for microsync, you're aware that that's a revenue stream, and you welcome it too. A lot of artists give us this excuse that I'm traveling for the next 2 months and I'm going to think of microsync later. And for me, it's simple. It's a revenue stream that's not either or. It's something that needs to happen, right? And it's also important, we spoke of distribution. I do feel that it's not a distributor who's going to make an artist. Artists can get discovered through so many other mediums. If you are making your music available for content creators to use, if you're collaborating with other folks, a distributor can push, your music. We had a song that became super popular because a content creator with 40 million subscribers used it, and everyone following his videos kept asking, what song is it? The song suddenly saw 100,000 streams happen. That's when the distributor pushed the song a lot more.
Yes.
So I think a lot of it has synergies, and it's symbiotic, and artists need to be aware of sync and microsync today going forward.
100%. And the last thing I'm going to say about this for the moment is that the evolution of markets in terms of the establishment of sync as a portion of the business changes drastically dependent on the market. If you go to a country like the United States, it's a very well set up organization. Not so much on the ad side, it's a little bit more wild, but in television and film, it's very regimented in terms of there's going to be a music supervisor on every single project because the networks and the studios demand that because of a variety of different reasons. You see that in Europe as well, to a greater and greater degree, and you start to see it as more streaming networks are creating more local points of production. You start to see them wanting to have music supervisors and having a system set up as well. But with that said, when you go to a place like Japan, I know for a fact there's only 3 music supervisors in the entire country. And in India, I don't think there's that much more than that, right?
No, it's just a handful of them.
Yeah.
But right now, the demand for international music, especially English music, Korean music in India, is going through the roof. So,
Yeah.
Here we've sat with many labels, distributors, publishers to try and understand how we can leverage their catalog in India. But music supervision is now becoming a thing in India. As I said, it was always commissioned. So the film director was actually the music supervisor, the uncredited
Yes,
music
exactly.
supervisor.
And it's a sort of a cart before the horse thing. Once you start to get that set up, then you start to have more deal flow. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of sync, are there any considerations, from your side, Robin, that you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on a couple of things you said. It made me think. I think microsync obviously is such an important. I think of it like a spearhead into monetization. I feel like we can talk about beyond streaming, but what I find really interesting in microsyncs is quite often we'll be going through usage reports and we'll see songs pop, multi-years after release, and we're all sat kind of going, what on earth's going on here? And it's almost always because there's been some sync or microsync or there's been a use on a platform or a TV advert or something. So actually now we have someone that builds some tools to try and help us identify that, so we're not being so reactive and seeing it post. You can actually say, hey, there's been some syncs happening here. We expect to see the income come through. So I think sync for me is I always think about streaming because that's our business, but sync is a great way of pushing through, using it as a spearhead into the majority of the income, which is still streaming. So I think it's really interesting. And also on Epidemic, really quickly, you mentioned Epidemic Sound before. We represent Epidemic Sound, and they were a really interesting client who obviously have copyright-safe music that is distributed, but they weren't collecting the compositional shares because they don't want to be part of the local collection because they don't want disputes and they don't want to get into that kind of more traditional CMO, PRO world. So we actually support them on the compositional side, and it's another great example of outside of just the very vanilla streaming, the different types of monetization opportunities that are out there.
That's a really good point. And just to close the sync conversation for now, Guji, I am going to ask you, because when I look at sync, I'm going to go to your point, Robin, because I see this too. It's a fulcrum for greater streaming and greater notoriety and engagement. So, when you're looking at this from the Symphonic point of view, how do you help your clients to navigate this so that they can maximize the potential of promotion and streams from a sync?
Yes. So from a distribution perspective, you want to be available. I think you want to make sure that, okay, there's something happening here on the sync side. Make sure that your music is available in every platform that you can have it on. And then talk to your distributor and see what ways we can maximize or with those specific DSPs where things are actually shooting up. And those are the conversations you want to have. I'm really big on the whole relationship and being able to talk with us about those type of things. But onto his point as well, it's like we want to make sure that you're doing those things. You want to make sure that you get involved with sync. A lot of people look at it as an afterthought. At Symphonic, we also have a sync department, Bodega, which is a part of Symphonic. And that's something that I think artists tend to not explore. They tend to talk to us more about the distribution aspect of it. But really, look around. Take a look at other ways you could be available, because it's all about being available. Because when something does happen, if you're not there, then it's a wasted opportunity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And the last thing I'll say about sync is that if you really want to drill down into stuff, we have a bunch of free information on our website. If you go to mark@syncsummit.com and send me an email, it's just as it looks, mark@syncsummit.com. I'll follow up with you and I'll send you some links and free information so you can have a deeper dive into the ins and outs of how that part of the industry works. Okay, so with that said, let's leave sync behind now. What other areas of monetization do we see as being compelling and things that people should look at? My first thought I think about is brand tie-ins or tie-ins with social media. What do you guys think of that, just as a general thing, and from what you've seen and what you do?
Can I give you a personal opinion and a professional opinion?
Yes.
My personal opinion is I went to see Oasis in London on Saturday, and I spent an obscene amount of money on the Adidas tie-in stuff they do. Oh, it's so cool. And I think actually, you know, I think the more and more cool, innovative brand stuff that bands and artists can do. Oh my God! I mean, I'll spend so much money. It was just so well done, and you know, you look across however many people are at Wembley Stadium, and plus everywhere else they're playing, and everybody is wearing it. And not only just the Oasis collaboration, but the broader appeal to Adidas, and the Adidas shop is just out here. It kind of made me double take, going, "Oh, I'll go in and see what else they've got." You know, it's like that. So I think that from a fan perspective, I think from a professional perspective, I think the kind of super fandom stuff is at the moment totally under-monetized. And again, kind of sorry to pull it back to streaming, but from my point of view, I think there's going to be, and I would like to see, a proliferation and dissemination of the general a la carte streaming models. I'd like to see, can I pay or can I get some super fan experience of, again, like sticking with Oasis. I only really want to listen to Oasis or Oasis/inspired stuff, and I want to see backstage stuff, and I want to see their lyrics come together. And I think there have been some really interesting innovations in the platforms over the years. I remember SoundCloud doing something very cool. I think Apple tried to do something at the beginning, and maybe they were slightly too early because I didn't really feel that they stuck, but I feel like the next couple of years are going to be dominated by this idea of fans willing to pay more money to laser in. Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. Guji, anything to add?
Yeah, there's a lot of platforms that are sprouting out, right? You know, just even in the Philippines, for instance, there was a platform called Kumu, right, where you know, you give diamonds and you would engage, and you know, and if you're a fan of this specific artist who's performing in front of you, and you're giving them a special gift that actually, to be honest, has no real benefit except for it costs something. There's a monetary value for it. It's really helping the artists. They're earning from it. The fan engagement is great, and it's really building the super fans. And super fans are being able to support their artists in other ways than just streaming, right? So there's a lot of platforms. Like Twitch, for instance, does an amazing job with that as well.
Yep.
You know, and then we were just earlier today. There, NetEase, their platform, the engagement, leaving comments on songs. Things like that. It's helping the super fans support their artists even more, which in turn creates more opportunities for monetizing.
Great point.
So I'd like
Yeah.
to present a slightly different point of view. You know, not what if an artist does not have fans? Okay, we keep talking about super fans, but there are a lot of artists, and probably 95 out of 100 that you meet that really struggle to get any fan out there, right? And I think I have prepared a framework for all artists that I feel, you know, one should follow. I've been an artist. I was a full-time artist for about 14, 15 years, and I followed this framework. And the first one is try to get a fixed income for yourself. It's a salaried income. It's very hard to get. A lot of people ignore it because we're all living from one gig to another, performing live or in a session. But if you can find something that pays you on a monthly basis, take it. It's not going to take up your entire month. You could produce for a company. You could be a studio director. It'll help you invest in mutual funds, plan your SIPs. Do not underestimate the value of fixed income in life as an artist. A lot of artists make that mistake and many years go by. That's the first point I would like to make. And that's the first part of my quadrant. The second is, of course, when you're young, focus on a lot of gigs, as many as you can get. Perform live, play sessions, the branded content piece that you spoke about. In India, we're trying to get artists now becoming brand ambassadors for brands. We've seen cricketers and film stars do that. But we're now encouraging artists to associate with a brand on a yearly basis. Why not? I mean, you're traveling, you're doing sound check. There are so many touch points in which you can promote a brand. So why not offer your services on a yearly basis instead of trying to do a gig? That's the second part. The third, according to me, which most artists neglect and tell themselves that they cannot do, but they actually can do, is business. The business doesn't have to be a platform. It can be, a friend of mine recently opened a studio and it led to 10 studios. Now he's a singer, he's a full-time singer, but he has 10 studios. Another friend who's a guitar player has published a guitar course. He's now got 17 teachers. He focuses on making his music, but his course earns him money. I started Hoopr back in 2021. It's a business that, you know, builds equity. And the fourth part of it is passive income from royalties. When you're young, all the music that you can make will make you money when you're old. And I kid you not, there will be a time when you don't get active work. It does happen to the best of them. make sure that just the way we invest and our money makes money for us, your music should be making money for you, from publishing, from distribution, from sync, from microsync. Educate yourself. And no matter how popular you are, you got to tell yourself that I got to do all 4 of these to have a complete quadrant. And that's my only advice to any young artist out there.
No, I was going to say, I'm an artist as well, so I totally understand you in that sense, and that's why I'm working a job, because it's like we definitely need to make sure that we have all those things in place. You have 2 kids to support, you have a career to support as an artist, you want to make sure that you're doing as much as possible in order to be stable, right?
You know, I will just share a story. There is a friend of mine. He was India's hottest session player when it came to guitars. I think he would play 50% of all the Bollywood songs. One fine day, he got a paralytic stroke. For the past 3 years, he has not been able to move out of his bed. He's made no income since. And for 15 to 17 years, not a single recording that he made earns him money from publishing, streaming. He did not have any recordings in his own name. I think a lot of musicians make those mistakes of signing away their rights. Even if you do that, make sure there is a lot of your own catalog that you're creating only for passive income. It will, hold you in good stead.
That's a very important point, and thank you for that, Gaurav. And I will also just add to this, and then we'll have to do some closing remarks because we were out of time. But the one thing that I will say is that whether you're an artist or whether you're not an artist, you should be thinking of yourself in the way that I said this yesterday, and I'll say it again, a vertically integrated company thinks of itself. You've got your fan, your customer may stream. What else are they going to do? Are they going to share? Maybe they will engage with you by buying a ticket. Maybe they will get merchandise. Maybe they can be a conduit to a music supervisor or an advertiser who will then use your music in some form. So you really have to think about the whole value chain of what's possible to get money from in order to really be successful with an artist. That's my final point that I want to bring up. Now, for everybody here, give us what you think is the most important thing that people can do to maximize their monetization. And I'll let you go, Robin, first.
I would say 2 things. One, make sure you either keep control or understand who has control of your copyrights and make sure they're a trusted partner. And B, find a partner that is technology driven, especially in today's ecosystem, and build tools to maximize the value of that data across all levels.
Excellent. Guji?
Yeah, great points, and I think some of my points were mentioned there. So I think one thing I'll say from the artist perspective, be authentic. I think in everything that you do, be as authentic as possible. There's a lot of trends out there, and if you're just trying to jump on a trend in order to make a quick buck, it's not going to work. If you want to sustain a long-term career, not only will you have, find the partners and and communicating with people that you work with, authenticity is going to be the number one that's going to sustain your career down the long run.
Good. And Gaurav, I'll give you the final word.
Sure. I'd just say, focus on your art as much as possible, make great music. And as you said, Mark, be aware of your customer. You could have multiple customers across the chain. Be aware of your rights. And yeah, I think that should be enough.
Awesome. Well, guys, I really want to thank you so much for your insights and for sharing with everybody today. And this was really a great session. Thanks a lot, everybody. Okay.